Fears about postal votes as the race for number 10 hots up. Rishi Sunak was up early making a dawn visit to a refrigerated warehouse. For Sir Keir Starmer, a return to the football terraces. But looming concerns this lunchtime about some voters being left disenfranchised.
It is really important in this election that every single person has the ability to vote, and I hope vote for change.
And every vote matters, and every vote matters, particularly if you want to prevent a Labour supermajority.
Also ahead, reports of deaths as Hurricane Beryl tears up the Caribbean. Here, cheaper butter, coffee and TVs, how price rises in the shops are easing, and... reliving the fairy tale as Andy Murray pulls out of the Wimbledon singles tournament. Who will replace him on centre court?
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Yasmin Bodalbhai.
Good afternoon. There are less than 2 days to go until polls open in what is expected to be an historic general election. And for the leaders of the main parties, it seems every second counts in the race for number 10. Rishi Sunak was up at the crack of dawn visiting a distribution warehouse in Luton. Sir Keir Starmer is this lunchtime whizzing round the Midlands, both trying to mop up every last undecided vote. But there are growing concerns that some may not get to have their say, with fears that some postal votes may not arrive in time. Ministers say they are urgently investigating, but Royal Mail denies there's a backlog. Yasmin has the latest.
With less than 48 hours until Election Day, Rishi Sunak began an early morning whistle-stop tour. First to Luton, then to Oxfordshire.
Morning, how are you? Now, what time did you all start?
While Sir Keir Starmer hit the campaign trail in Nottinghamshire. But with just days until polling day, concern grows over reported delays to postal votes. The government says it's investigating the matter, with some ministers placing the blame on the Royal Mail.
It's right that the Royal Mail have said that they will look at any concerns where they're raised, because obviously we want to make sure everyone can vote, because this is an important election, and in spite of what some people want others to believe, that it's all a foregone conclusion, every vote matters.
In a statement, Royal Mail said they had no backlog of postal votes and remained confident that postal votes handed in on time would be delivered prior to polling day. Labour has emphasised the importance of ensuring that everyone has access to vote.
I am concerned about the postal ballots because it is really important in this election that every single person has the ability to vote, and I hope vote for change. And so I think it's on all of us, on a sort of non-party political basis, to say we must do everything we collectively can to ensure that those ballot papers get to people.
The Royal Mail is in regular contact with the Elections Minister and authorities. In the meantime, all political parties will be using the next few days to hammer home their core messages to the public. Yasmin, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, let's get more on those concerns about postal vote hold-ups and straight to our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith, who's in Aviemore this lunchtime. And Peter, the SNP accusing the UK government of leaving voters there disenfranchised.
Well, that's right, Yasmin. You can probably see that the Scottish summer is now here, just in time for the Scottish schools breaking up, and some of those schools started breaking up as early as last week. So we now have Scottish families at the airport, people who work in education, off on their holidays. And the SNP and many in Scotland had criticised the timing of this election being during Scotland's school holidays in the first place, but they were told, well, not to worry, there's always the postal vote system. Now we're hearing some of these families are off on holiday and they still haven't received their ballots before they've gone on holiday, and the SNP are saying this is leaving many disenfranchised and it's democracy denied. This is what Stephen Flynn said this morning.
The reality is that people have been disenfranchised, but they've been disenfranchised by the UK government because we warned them that this was school holiday time in Scotland. We told them not to have an election once the school holidays are started. But Rishi Sunak, like he does with everything else, ignored the people of Scotland. And now we're seeing a situation where people aren't going to have the right to vote. It's simply not good enough.
The problem is particularly acute here in Scotland because we've got about a third of the seats that require less than a 5% swing to change hands. The SNP are saying it's too close to call. It's an election on a knife edge, and so if we see that seats are remarkably close, if some people have been denied their vote, then there's going to be a lot of people saying that this was indeed not a proper and fair election.
Peter, thank you. Well, elsewhere on the campaign trail, a second Reform UK candidate has defected to the Conservatives, calling some of her former colleagues racist, misogynistic and bigoted. Georgie David, who was the candidate for West Ham and Beckton, said Reform and its leadership were not racist, but the vast majority of candidates were, and that she doesn't want to be associated with them. And Ed Davey undertook one of his more tame campaign stunts, indulging in a game of dominoes in Somerset. He called for voters to help his party topple Conservative MPs, saying this Thursday is a historic moment for the country. And if you're still undecided, you can head to our website. There you will find a handy guide to all the party's main policies and key takeaways from their manifestos. You can find it all at itv.com/news. Next, at least 2 people have died as Hurricane Beryl rips through the Caribbean. Now upgraded to a Category 5, it is the earliest such storm ever to form in the Atlantic, and experts say that it has been fuelled by record warm waters. A hurricane warning is in force for Jamaica after it left a trail of destruction in Grenada and St Vincent. Our science correspondent Martin Stew has more.
Winds up to 160 miles per hour have battered the islands to the southeast of the Caribbean. Trees bent by Beryl's hurricane force, homes flattened and flooded.
I didn't think that the damage would be so much. I just come to open the shop to check on it, but now I realise it is much more than I thought.
At least 2 people have died. Hundreds more have been moved to emergency shelters. From space, you can see the sprawling scale of the hurricane. Upgraded to a Category 5 overnight, it is the earliest time in the year a cyclone of this power has ever been recorded in the Atlantic. The storm's energy powered and prolonged by unusually warm ocean temperatures.
You know, there's still a lot that we need to learn about how global warming impacts hurricanes, that some studies show that there'll be fewer storms, but more intense storms in the Atlantic. As a community, kind of have a consensus now that we see that there's definitely more rapid intensification and more intense, higher end storms.
In these relatively poor nations, industries and livelihoods have been battered by storm surges from the ocean they rely on.
So many people have lost their boats, and all the boats in the water now are being destroyed because they're clashing against one another. There's nothing more we can do but stand and watch total destruction. Our livelihood going down the drain.
The destruction isn't done yet. Beryl is now tracking towards Jamaica before it's forecast to lose power over Mexico on Thursday night. Martin Stew, ITV News.
Some other news, and hundreds of tourists have been evacuated from the Greek island of Kos overnight as firefighters continue to battle wildfires. It's the latest in a number of fires in Greece in recent days. Unusually high winds and high temperatures for this time of year are to blame. In Kenya, police have used tear gas to break up anti-government protests in the capital, Nairobi. There have been demonstrations across a number of cities over a proposed tax rise bill. Human rights groups say 39 people have been killed since protests began. And in the United States, President Biden has warned that yesterday's Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity could mean Donald Trump would be more emboldened to do whatever he wants. That's if his Republican challenger regains the White House in November's election. The court decision all but guarantees Mr. Trump will not face trial in Washington ahead of the November election. Now here, jurors have been told that the man accused of plotting to kidnap, rape and murder Holly Willoughby was isolated and lonely, but his supposed plans were only a fantasy. Lawyers have been giving their closing statements to the trial. Our reporter Sam Holder is at the court now. And Sam, what happened there this morning?
Well, Yasmin, we are headed towards the end of the trial now, and the defence have been summing up the evidence. The lawyer for Gavin Plum says that he didn't know why on earth police had arrived and showed up at his home in order to arrest him, because, according to the lawyer, this alleged plot was just a dark, twisted fantasy. The 37-year-old is accused of planning to break into Holly Willoughby's home in order to kidnap, rape and murder the star. Online, Plum used the name Big Bear and discussed the alleged plan with an undercover police officer, which included using chloroform on Holly Willoughby to sedate her. But Plum's lawyer says this wasn't serious. None of this was serious, as evidenced by the fact that the supposed plan included jumping over a wall into Holly Willoughby's home, which would have been impossible because he weighed more than 30 stone. But the job of the jury here today isn't to decide how realistic it would have been for the plan to succeed, but whether Gavin Plum was being serious about it.
OK, Sam, thank you very much. Still ahead in the last few minutes, the new Childrens Laureate has been announced. And we are live at Wimbledon after Andy Murray pulls out of the singles tournament. But first, some good news for households this lunchtime, with new figures showing that food inflation is at its slowest rate for years. It means prices are still rising, but nothing like as quickly as they were. Overall, shop prices increased by 0.2% in June compared to 0.6% in May. That is the lowest rate since October 2021. For fresh food, inflation was at 1.5%. Again, that's less than the 2% rate seen the month before. And prices actually fell in non-food shops. They were down 1% compared to May's 0.8%. Well, Sally Biddulph is on a high street for us this lunchtime. And Sally, are shoppers there actually feeling this in their pockets?
Well, as with all statistics, Yasmin, we need some context here. Prices are going down, but they still remain stubbornly high. They are still 2.5% higher than they were this time last year. But the good news today is this is the 14th consecutive month when food prices and retail prices have fallen. However, the shoppers we spoke to today are yet to feel the benefits.
No, as far as I'm concerned, they're still quite high. Yeah, your weekly shopping bill is just so much more than what it was.
Shop at more places to get our budget lower, and that's really just to, to keep our household running. I've got 3 kids. They eat a lot as they do, and I've got to make sure that I can afford to put food on the table.
I don't think they've changed. I don't know how they work that one out. It seems to be going up.
So consumers feeling the pinch, but the retail industry says we should remain positive.
But generally, prices have now started to stabilise. We're no longer seeing the drastic increases that we saw throughout much of 2023. It's more of a picture of stabilisation now.
So the reasons for these falling in prices are threefold. Firstly, inflation is coming down. It is now at 2%, which is the Bank of England target. Secondly, essential food items like coffee and milk and butter that we buy all the time, the prices of those is coming down. And that's because the cost of fertiliser and feed has come down. So the input costs are down and the end product is also cheaper. And lastly, retailers are hungry for our business, so they are heavily discounting certain items. A prime example is widescreen TVs ahead of the Euros, which have been sold at a much lower price than normal. So the headline today is inflation is coming down, but consumer confidence is yet to go up.
Sally, thank you. Now, while we've been on air this lunchtime, the new Childrens Laureate has been revealed. The best-selling author Frank Cottrell-Boyce takes over the role, and he says he'll be knocking on the door of whoever arrives at number 10 to promote reading among young people. He follows Joseph Coelho, and they've been speaking to our correspondent Rachel Townsend.
Yes, I'm here with Childrens Laurate, past and present. Joseph, we'll start with you first of all. You hand the baton over today. What has struck you the most during your tenure about the roles literature plays in the lives of children?
Oh gosh, it's so incredibly important. We know from various studies that those most engaged with literacy and with reading have higher levels of mental well-being, better life chances later on in life. And I've been so amazed at the passion for children's literacy, especially from librarians, from teachers and from young people. I've managed to meet lots of young people over the last 2 years who are really just adamant that they want to write, they want to read and they love stories.
And they are sentiments I'm sure you'd echo, Frank. You are just minutes into the role.
Yeah.
You follow names like Julia Donaldson, Michael Rose. And I mean, how special is this?
It's terrifying. I mean, I can give you any masterclass in imposter syndrome that you want. But it's important, we've got to step up to the plate. We have no idea what kind of world we're sending our children into. We don't know what skills they're going to need or what roles they're going to fulfill. But we know they're going to need to know how to be happy. And nothing teaches you how to be happy more than being read to and enjoying stories and having a store of stories in your head.
Can you remember when stories first captured you?
Oh, I really can, because when they were first married, my mum and dad lived with my grandma, and it was in a 2-bedroom flat. So me and my brother, my mum and my dad were in one room. So my mum took us over the road to Kirkdale Library every day, and I now realise that she just wanted to get out of the house to somewhere safe and warm and nice and pleasant, but it was full of stories. And she read to me, and it was amazing, and that ability to find something good in such a difficult set of circumstances, because it must have been tough for her. But I only experienced it as a pleasure.
Well, we wish you all the best with it, and thank you both for joining us this lunchtime. Back to you.
Tennis now, and Andy Murray often put us through the ringer during his most tense matches, and today he kept us all on edge again. The 2-time Wimbledon champion made his decision to withdraw from his final ever singles tournament there just hours before he was due on court. He had an operation on his back just over a week ago, and in the end he ran out of time to recover. He does, though, still hope to play in the men's doubles with his brother Jamie. In a moment we'll have the latest from SW19. First, our correspondent Gavin Vincent looks back on a true tennis legend.
Sir Andrew Murray reached the summit of his sport twice at Wimbledon. In 2013, he made history. He was the first British men's singles champion in 77 years. He did it with a game built on complete physical commitment, which has taken its toll. He now plays with a metal hip, and 2 weeks ago a back problem flared up. But only yesterday, he was still hopeful of making his last ever singles draw at Wimbledon.
I've been practicing for the last few days. I played a set today and it went pretty well, but I still don't have 100% sort of feeling and sensation in my leg.
Unfortunately, said a statement from his team this morning, despite working incredibly hard on his recovery since his operation just over a week ago, Andy has taken the very difficult decision not to play the singles this year. As you can imagine, they say, he is extremely disappointed. Murray's Wimbledon story started way back in 2005 when a teenager from Dunblane showed up in SW19 with an iron will to win, which eventually got him to his first final in 2012, where the crowd truly took him into their hearts, not for winning, but for the way he lost and the tears he shed after trying to beat Roger Federer. 12 years later, Sir Andy is a British sporting great who will play doubles with his brother Jamie at this year's championships. Maybe there's just a little bit more of that Wimbledon story yet to be told. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
Well, let's get the latest from SW19 and join our reporter Martha Fairley, who's there. And Martha, Murray may have ruled himself out, but another Brit now takes his place on centre court this afternoon.
Yes, and despite the disappointment of Andy Murray's announcement, today is set to be a bumper day for British players. The British men's #1 Jack Draper's first round draw against Sweden's Elias Ymer has now been moved to centre court, where they will be the third match scheduled this afternoon. The slot was, of course, vacated as a result of Andy Murray's decision to withdraw. But it wouldn't be Wimbledon without the rain, would it? And while the roof has been closed on centre court and court 1, elsewhere, the covers have just come back off after going on late this morning, interrupting several other matches with Britons on court. Most notably today, Paul Jubb, who's powering ahead against the Brazilian Thiago Seybold-Wild after winning the first set 6-1, the second 6-3. He's now 2-1 up in the third. And Harriet Dart is through against China's Zhu Zhanbai. The score there was a 6-3, 6-love. Perhaps the rain will be the break that other players needed to regroup. Both Billy Harris and Jan Choinski were struggling in their matches this morning. Other names to look out for this afternoon are the British women's #1 Katie Boulter, Dan Evans and Cam Norrie.
OK, Martha Fairley in Wimbledon, thank you. And just before we go, a new 50p coin has been launched ahead of the Paris 2024 Games. Some of Britain's Olympic and Paralympic hopefuls were at the Royal Mint to see some of the very first coins being struck. Its design features 2 athletes side by side, framed against the Union flag. The silhouette of the Eiffel Tower can also be seen. Each athlete will receive one in their kit bag as a good luck token. And that's it this lunchtime. Mary's here with the evening news at 6:30. The news where you are is next from all of us on the Lunchtime team. Goodbye for now.
Today we'll see warmer temperatures moving in from the east, especially around tea time. Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello to you again. A very good afternoon. Feeling cool for the start of July. A lot of cloud out there this afternoon, but better, brighter conditions further west. This is the earliest satellite and radar picture, the best of those breaks in the cloud across northern England, parts of the southwest and Wales. Here, some decent spells of sunshine. Otherwise, a lot of cloud cover, keeping it disappointingly grey. A few showery outbreaks to the far southeast and parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some steadier rain for the far northwest of Scotland as we head through the afternoon. And where we've got the cloud and the breeze, feeling disappointingly cool for the time of year. Where we've got the sunshine, temperatures lifted to 20 degrees. And we've got some late and low sunshine before dusk across parts of England and Wales. And then overnight, this area of rain rolling its way from west to east is looking a little